My name is Lorraine, and I'm 54 years old. For as long as I can remember, Christmas had been my favorite time of year. It wasn't about the gifts or the lights, though I always went overboard with both. It was about the feeling of family, of togetherness. My late husband, Daniel, used to call me the Christmas Queen. I'd start decorating the day after Thanksgiving, humming carols as I hung garlands and baked gingerbread cookies. But since Daniel passed away 3 years ago, the house had grown quieter, emptier. The first 2 Christmases after his death, I spent alone. Jenna, my only daughter, had told me she was too busy or traveling with Tyler, her husband. I didn't argue. I told myself she was building her own life, and that's what any mother would want for her child. Still, the ache of her absence settled deep inside me. I missed her laugh, her messy way of wrapping gifts, the way she'd sneak extra frosting from the cookie bowl when she thought I wasn't looking. So when Jenna called me in early December that year, saying she wanted to come home for Christmas, my heart nearly burst. She said she and Tyler wanted to spend the holidays with me, that they missed me, that things had been hard financially, and they needed some family warmth. I didn't even hesitate. "Of course, sweetheart," I told her. "Come home, I'll make everything perfect." That night, I pulled the old decorations out from the attic. I hung the same angel Daniel and I had bought in our first year of marriage at the top of the tree. I baked batches of oatmeal cookies, Jenna's favorite, and strung twinkling lights along the porch. The house came alive again, glowing with color and warmth. For the first time in years, I felt joy return. In the days leading up to their arrival, I went all out. I bought gifts for both of them, a soft scarf for Jenna, a watch for Tyler, even though money was tighter than it used to be. After Daniel died, I had to live off my savings and the small pension from his company. Still, I wanted Christmas to feel magical. Jenna had always been my world. I couldn't wait to see her smile again. When they finally arrived, it was snowing, soft flakes swirling through the air like something out of a postcard. I ran to the door, heart pounding. And there she was, my little girl, though not so little anymore. Her hair was shorter, her clothes more expensive looking than I remembered. Tyler stood behind her, carrying their luggage. "Mom," Jenna said, hugging me tightly. For a moment I almost cried. But when I looked into her eyes, something felt. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Tyler gave me a quick nod, avoiding eye contact altogether. "It's so good to see you both," I said, stepping aside to let them in. "Dinner's ready, your favorite pot roast with roasted potatoes." Tyler mumbled a thank you and set their bags down, but I caught him glancing around like he was sizing up the place. I brushed it off, telling myself I was overthinking. That evening we sat around the table, and I tried to fill the silence with cheerful chatter. I asked about their jobs, their apartment, their plans. Jenna told me Tyler had lost his job recently, and they were figuring things out. She looked embarrassed, so I didn't press further. I told them they could stay as long as they needed, that's what family was for. We opened a bottle of wine, and by the end of the night, I was laughing again. It felt like old times, even if Tyler stayed mostly quiet. Before bed, I placed all the wrapped gifts under the tree, including one extra special for Jenna, a necklace that had belonged to my mother. I wanted her to have something meaningful, something to remind her of family roots. On Christmas morning, the house smelled like cinnamon and pine. I woke up early, brewed coffee, and waited for them to come downstairs. When Jenna finally appeared, she looked tense, clutching a small, neatly wrapped envelope. "Merry Christmas, Mom," she said, handing it to me. "This is kind of different, but important." Her voice shook slightly, but I didn't notice at first. I smiled, touched by her gesture. "You didn't have to get me anything, honey. You being here is the best gift." Tyler sat back on the couch, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. I carefully peeled the wrapping and opened the envelope. Inside was a folded document, official-looking, with bank letterhead. For a second, my brain didn't process what I was seeing. Then, the numbers jumped out at me. $48,300 owed. My name listed as the responsible party. My smile froze. "Jenna, what is this?" I asked quietly. She swallowed hard, her face pale. "Mom, There's something I need to explain. Tyler looked away. The warmth of the room seemed to drain out in an instant. The twinkling lights, the music, the smell of cookies, all of it faded as I stared at that piece of paper in my hand. I didn't know that the gift she was about to give me would change everything I believed about my own daughter. For a long moment, I just stared at the paper in my hand, the numbers blurring as I tried to make sense of them. $48,300. My name, my address, my signature, or at least something that looked like it. My chest tightened as if the air had suddenly thickened around me. Jenna, I don't understand, I finally managed to say, my voice trembling. What is this? She fidgeted with the hem of her sweater, avoiding my eyes. Mom, it's a credit account. In your name. In my name? I repeated, disbelief flooding me. But I don't have any credit accounts besides my regular bank card. What are you talking about? Tyler shifted uncomfortably on the couch. It's not as bad as it looks, he muttered. Not as bad as it looks? I snapped, turning to him. Why is my name on this? Jenna's voice cracked. Because we used your information to open it, just for a while, Mom. We meant to fix it before it got this bad. Her words hit me like a slap. I felt my knees weaken and I sank into the armchair. You used my name? Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't want to. Tyler said it was temporary. We were behind on bills. And the car broke down right before the wedding. We just needed a little help. And I thought. You thought what? I interrupted, my voice rising. That you could steal from me and call it help? Tyler's tone turned defensive. It's not stealing, Lorraine. You're her mother. Family helps each other. You've got savings, a house, we just needed breathing room. I stared at him in disbelief. The audacity in his voice made my skin crawl. That's not how help works. You forged my name. That's a crime! Jenna's tears spilled over. Mom, please don't make it sound like that. We were desperate. I swear we were going to pay it off. But things kept getting worse. I looked down at the document again. My signature stared back at me, careful, deliberate strokes mimicking my handwriting perfectly. They had even copied the way I looped my LS. A cold wave of realization swept through me. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a one-time slip. It was deliberate. How long? I asked quietly. She blinked. What? How long have you been using my name? Jenna hesitated, biting her lip. Almost a year, she whispered. A year? My voice cracked. A whole year? You've been lying to me that long? She started sobbing. Mom, I didn't want to. Tyler said he'd fix it before you ever found out. I turned my gaze to him again. And you thought this was okay? He crossed his arms. I did what I had to do. We're drowning in debt because of the economy. You wouldn't understand, you've got everything handled. I have. Everything handled because I worked for it, I snapped. Because I've spent decades saving and sacrificing so Jenna could have a better life, and this is how you repay me? The silence that followed was deafening. Only the faint sound of the clock ticking on the mantel filled the air. My heart pounded in my ears, each beat heavy with betrayal. Mom, please, Jenna whispered, stepping closer. We just need a little more time. We'll pay it back, I promise. I stood up, trembling. I trusted you, Jenna. I trusted you with everything I have left. You used my name, my credit, my life, and for what? To make Tyler look good? Her sobs grew louder. It wasn't about that. I was scared, Mom. You always seemed so strong, and I didn't want to disappoint you. I shook my head slowly. You didn't disappoint me, Jenna. You broke me. Tyler muttered something under his breath, but I caught it. Overdramatic. That single word made my stomach turn. Get out, I said, my voice steady now, though my hands shook. Jenna looked up, startled. What? I said get out, both of you. Now. Mom, please don't do this. Get out of my house, I repeated, louder this time. Tyler stood, glaring at me. You're making a huge mistake. You think the bank's gonna believe some old lady didn't sign her own papers? I didn't respond. I just pointed toward the door. Jenna hesitated, tears streaking down her cheeks. Mom, please, go, I whispered. She turned slowly and walked out, Tyler following her. The door closed behind them with a heavy thud that seemed to echo through every room in the house. I sank back into the chair, my hands gripping the arms as if the world might spin out from under me. The Christmas lights still twinkled softly, mocking me. The gifts, the decorations, the warmth I had so carefully built it all felt hollow now. I stared at the envelope lying on the coffee table, the numbers glaring up at me like an accusation. I wanted to believe this was just a mistake, that my daughter couldn't have done this to me. But deep down, I knew better. And the way Jenna looked at me when I questioned her made me realize it wasn't an accident at all. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my living room, staring at the dim glow of the Christmas tree, my mind running in frantic circles. Every ornament seemed to mock me, every twinkling light a reminder of how naive I had been. My daughter, my only child, had used my name to open a credit account worth almost $50,000. And not by accident, she had forged my signature. I replayed the day over and over. The nervous way she'd handed me that envelope. The guilt in her eyes. Tyler's smug expression as though this entire situation was somehow my fault. None of it made sense, yet somehow it made perfect sense. She'd always been trusting, easily influenced, and Tyler had always seemed the controlling type. But as much as I wanted to blame him entirely, I couldn't ignore the truth. Jenna had done this too. By morning, my phone buzzed with a text from her. "Mom, please can we talk? I'll come alone. I promise." Part of me didn't want to answer, but the other part, the mother part, couldn't ignore her. So I told her to come. When she arrived later that afternoon, she looked different. Her makeup was smeared, her eyes red and swollen. She sat across from me at the kitchen table. "Mom, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I know you're angry, and you should be. I just need to explain." I crossed my arms, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Then explain, Jenna. Tell me why you thought stealing my identity was okay." Her face crumpled. "It started small. Tyler said his credit score was too low to get approved for the wedding expenses. He said if we used your name, we could pay it off fast, and no one would get hurt. I didn't think it would get this bad. So you let him convince you to steal from your own mother?" Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I didn't think of it that way. I thought it was just borrowing. I thought you'd understand once we paid it back." I stared at her, feeling something inside me fracture. "Borrowing is when you ask, Jenna, not when you forge my signature and lie for a year." She covered her face and sobbed. "I didn't know what else to do. We were drowning in bills. Tyler lost his job, and I was barely making anything at the salon. I was so scared, Mom. I thought I could fix it before you ever found out." My heart ached hearing her cry like that. The maternal instinct in me wanted to reach across the table, to comfort her, but I stopped myself. Comforting her now would only excuse what she'd done. "Did Tyler make you do it?" I asked quietly. Her hands dropped to her lap. She hesitated before answering. "He pushed for it. But I signed the papers. I wrote your name. It was me." That admission hit harder than anything else. My throat tightened, and I felt tears burning behind my eyes. "You forged my signature? You used my name, my credit, my life's work, all for him?" She nodded weakly. I stood up, gripping the counter for support. My legs felt like they could give out at any second. "Jenna, do you understand what you've done? This isn't something that just disappears. I could lose my home, my credit, everything I've built." "I know," she said, sobbing. "I'll pay it back. I'll fix everything. Just don't call the police, please." The words hung in the air like poison. "Police?" I repeated. "You think this can just go away with an apology? Please, Mom. If they find out, we'll both be in trouble. I'll do anything you want, I promise. I'll start making payments." Stop," I interrupted sharply. "You'll do nothing until I decide what happens next." She flinched, her lower lip trembling. "Please don't hate me." I wanted to tell her I didn't, but in that moment, I didn't recognize her. She wasn't my sweet, giggling little girl anymore. She was a stranger sitting in my kitchen, asking me not to report a crime she'd committed against me. "I think you should go," I said softly. She looked up, panicked. What? No, Mom, please. Don't send me away again. I shook my head. You made that choice when you forged my name, you and Tyler both. Now you'll have to live with the consequences. She stood slowly, wiping her face. You'll regret this, she said suddenly, her tone shifting. Tyler says family should stick together, but if you turn on us, I cut her off. If Tyler says one more word about family, tell him he can explain it to the police. She froze, then stormed out of the kitchen, slamming the front door behind her. The silence afterward was suffocating. I sank into a chair, my heart pounding painfully. My hands shook as I stared at the paperwork still lying on the counter. It was like looking at a map of betrayal, every line, every number, every signature carved into my trust. I picked up the phone to call my bank, but halfway through dialing, I stopped. I didn't even know where to start. How do you tell someone that your own daughter stole your identity? I spent the rest of the day pacing through the house, my mind torn between love and rage. I thought about Daniel, what he would have said, how disappointed he would have been. I had tried so hard to raise Jenna right, to teach her responsibility, empathy, integrity. But somewhere along the way, something had gone terribly wrong. That night, I sat by the window, watching the snow fall outside. I wanted to believe this was over, that Jenna would come to her senses. But a sick feeling in my gut told me otherwise. Because deep inside, I knew this wasn't the end, they would come back for something more. The first call came 3 days after Christmas. I was in the kitchen, washing dishes when the phone rang. The voice on the other end was polite, professional, but what he said made my stomach drop. Mrs. Taylor, this is a courtesy call from Eastline Financial Services. We're following up on your outstanding balance of $48,300. We haven't received payment for over 3 months. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My grip on the phone tightened. That's a mistake, I said quickly. I don't have an account with you. He paused. Ma'am, we have your full name, address, and verified identification on file. The account was opened under your signature last year. I felt my heart thud painfully. That's not my signature, I said firmly. Someone used my name without permission. The man sighed in that customer service way that sounds sympathetic but isn't. I understand, Mrs. Taylor, but the documents show your handwriting. If you'd like to dispute it, you'll need to file a formal fraud report. In the meantime, payment is still required to avoid legal escalation. Legal escalation? The words made my knees weak. I'm telling you, I didn't open that account, I said, my voice breaking. After several minutes of arguing, he finally gave me instructions to submit proof of identity theft, copies of my ID, a police report, and a written statement. When I hung up, my hands were shaking so badly that I could barely dial 911 to ask how to file a fraud report. The officer who took my statement over the phone was kind, but his tone carried the same weary familiarity I'd heard from the debt collector. Ma'am, this kind of thing happens more often than you'd think, he said. Family members are usually the culprits. We'll need documentation of the fraudulent account and signatures. I sent everything I had, bank statements, screenshots, the forged papers. It felt surreal typing "suspect my daughter Jenna Taylor" on an official police form. I sat staring at that line for a long time before pressing submit. 2 days later, I received an email from Eastline Financial. Attached were scanned copies of the original application and a note that said, "Signature verified by notary." I opened the file, and my stomach dropped again. The handwriting looked exactly like mine, the loops, the spacing, even the slight slant of my letters. Whoever had done it had studied my writing carefully. Jenna? She had access to my old insurance forms, the ones I'd kept in a filing cabinet when she still lived here. She could have taken them any time she wanted. I printed the documents and laid them out across the dining table. Each page a testament to her betrayal. My name but not my doing. That night, another call came. A different voice this time. Colder. Mrs. Taylor, this is your final notice before we begin proceedings to seize your assets. I gripped the phone tightly. You can't do that. The account is fraudulent. It's under investigation. Until we have confirmation, ma'am, we are legally permitted to pursue collection. When I hung up, my whole body was trembling. I felt sick. I didn't have enough money to cover something like this. My retirement savings would barely stretch for another 10 years as it was. I'd always prided myself on being careful with money. Now my own daughter had put everything I'd worked for at risk. Over the next week, the calls became relentless. Morning, afternoon, even late at night. Each time I saw an unfamiliar number, my chest tightened. I stopped answering at one point, but the voicemails kept piling up the same cold, scripted threats of legal action. Finally, I decided to go to the bank in person. Maybe if they saw me face to face, they'd believe me. The woman at the fraud department, Miss Patel, looked at me with cautious sympathy as I explained everything. She pulled up the account, clicking through the files with a furrowed brow. "The signature is consistent," she said quietly, "but if you're claiming forgery, we'll need handwriting verification and a police report. It could take several months." "Months?" I asked, horrified. "They're already calling me every day." "I understand, Mrs. Taylor," she said gently. "You can request a temporary freeze on your accounts to prevent further damage, but the investigation process isn't fast." As she spoke, I felt tears welling in my eyes. It wasn't just the money, it was the shame. The idea that my own daughter had done this, and now strangers were treating me like a liar. I went home and sat in the living room again, staring at the twinkling Christmas lights I hadn't yet taken down. They looked different now, not cheerful, just haunting. I tried calling Jenna that evening. No answer. I tried again the next morning. Still nothing. Then I texted, "Jenna, the bank and police are involved now. I need you to call me." Hours passed, no reply. Then, late that night, just as I was about to turn in, there was a knock at the door. I froze. It was nearly midnight. I hesitated, then opened it a crack. There she was, Jenna, standing on my porch with a forced smile and puffy eyes, as if nothing had happened. "Mom," she said softly, clutching a small box in her hands. "Can we talk?" My voice came out in a whisper. "What are you doing here?" She stepped closer, her tone strangely calm. "I just thought we could fix things." The faint glow from the porch light hit her face, and for a split second, I saw something cold in her expression, something I didn't recognize in my daughter. Until one evening, she showed up at my door, smiling as if nothing had happened. When I opened the door wider, Jenna stepped in without waiting for an invitation. The warmth from the house brushed against the cold night air that followed her inside. She looked thinner, exhausted, but there was still something guarded in her expression, like she was rehearsing every word she was about to say. "Mom," she started softly, placing a small bouquet of roses on the table. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I've been thinking about what happened. I know I hurt you." I stood there, arms crossed, unsure what to say. Part of me wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe my daughter had come to make things right. But deep down, I knew Jenna didn't show up in the middle of the night just to apologize. "Sit down," I said finally. "We'll talk." She took a seat at the table and folded her hands, her eyes darting around the room like she couldn't bear to look at me for long. "I know what I did was wrong," she began. "Tyler and I were just desperate. I thought I could fix it before it got out of hand, but now everything's falling apart." I let out a long sigh. "Desperate or not, Jenna, you used me, you stole from me, and you let it go on for almost a year." She flinched but kept her voice steady. "I know. I came here because I need your help again." Those words hit me like ice water. I blinked, certain I had misheard her. "Help?" I repeated. "You're kidding." Her voice broke as she leaned forward. "Please, Mom, just listen. The collectors are after us. Tyler owes more money to someone else, not the bank this time. It's bad. We need $10,000 or things are going to get worse." I stared at her, completely stunned. "You come here after ruining my credit, nearly destroying my savings, and you want me to give you more money?" She nodded, tears filling her eyes. "Mom, I wouldn't ask if I wasn't terrified. They're threatening us, calling non-stop. Tyler said if we could just pay this off, we could start fresh." I clenched my fists on the table. "Tyler said, Tyler always says, doesn't he? And you always listen. She looked offended. He's my husband, Mom. I have to stand by him. I laughed bitterly. Stand by him? Even when he drags you into crimes? Jenna, he's using you and you're too blind to see it. Her eyes flashed with anger. You don't know him. You've never even tried to understand him. He's a good man who's just made mistakes. Good men don't convince their wives to steal from their mothers, I said sharply. And good daughters don't ask for $10,000 after doing it. Jenna's tone hardened. You don't get it. We're out of options. If you don't help, something bad could happen to us. Something bad already has, I replied quietly. You did this to yourself. She slammed her hand on the table, startling me. You're just like always cold, judgmental, thinking you're better than everyone else. My jaw tightened. No, Jenna. I'm a woman who's tired of being used. You and Tyler crossed a line that can't be undone. She stood up abruptly, her face twisting with frustration. Fine. I should have known you'd never forgive me. You care more about your stupid money than your own daughter. I rose too, trying to stay calm. Don't turn this around on me. This isn't about money, it's about trust, respect, and decency. All things you've forgotten. Her eyes filled with rage and tears all at once. You think you're a saint, don't you? Always acting like you're the victim. You never take responsibility for anything. I was stunned. Responsibility? Jenna, I didn't do anything wrong. You did, she said through gritted teeth. You made me feel like I was never enough. You pushed me so hard to be perfect, and when I failed, you made me feel worthless. Tyler understands me in ways you never could. The words cut deep. I wanted to defend myself, to tell her how wrong she was, how much I'd sacrificed for her, but I realized it wouldn't matter. She wasn't here to make peace. She was here to manipulate me again. I took a deep breath. You need to leave, I said firmly. Her face crumpled. Mom, please don't do this. If you turn your back on me now, I'll have nothing. You already had everything, I whispered. And you threw it away. Her voice dropped low, venomous. Tyler said you'd do this. He said you only care about yourself. But don't worry, Mom, you'll regret this. We'll make sure of it. My blood ran cold. Are you threatening me? She didn't answer. She turned, stormed toward the door, and yanked it open. I could hear her voice cracking as she muttered, You'll see. You always do. The door slammed behind her, and for a few seconds, the silence was so heavy it was hard to breathe. I sank into the chair again, my hands trembling. I wanted to cry, but there were no tears left, just anger, disbelief, and a growing determination. That was the moment I realized she wasn't coming back for forgiveness. She was coming back for what she thought she could still take. And that meant I had to protect myself. No more pleading, no more hoping she'd change. I had to act. That night, I called my lawyer, the same man who had handled Daniel's estate years ago, and asked for an urgent appointment. Because I wasn't just going to defend myself anymore. I was going to fight back. That night, I decided I wasn't going to be her victim anymore. I was going to fight back. The next morning, I woke up with a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in months. The grief, the confusion, the guilt, it all hardened into something else. Determination. I had spent weeks reacting to Jenna and Tyler's chaos. But now it was time for me to take control. They had taken my trust, my credit, and almost my peace of mind. I wasn't about to let them take anything else. I called my lawyer, Mr. Hensley, first thing that morning. He had handled Daniel's estate after his passing, and though we hadn't spoken in a while, he still remembered me. Lorraine, I'll see you this afternoon, he said. Bring everything, every document, every message, every bank statement you have. When I arrived at his office, I felt small and nervous, clutching a folder full of printed emails and account statements. He listened carefully as I explained everything from the Christmas gift to the forged documents and Jenna's late-night visit. His expression darkened with every word. Lorraine, he said finally, steepling his fingers, this is serious. What they did is fraud, identity theft, and forgery. We can build a strong case. But you'll need evidence, clear proof of their involvement. The more you can document, the better. I already have the bank documents and the credit statements, I said. They show the fake signature. He nodded. Good. But you'll also want to keep any communication with your daughter or her husband. If she reaches out again, don't cut her off completely. Let her talk. Let her incriminate herself. Record it if you can. The thought of pretending to forgive Jenna made my stomach twist. But I understood the logic. You want me to act like nothing's wrong? For now, he said gently. If she believes you're calming down, she'll let her guard down too. People like Tyler always overplay their hand. I sat there in silence for a moment, realizing what this meant. I was about to set a trap for my own daughter. When I got home, I pulled out a notebook and started writing everything I remembered: dates, times, what Jenna had said, what Tyler had threatened. I even noted the exact wording of her text messages. My lawyer said a detailed timeline would help the investigation. Then I went a step further. I bought a small digital voice recorder from the local electronics store. It was barely larger than a pen and easy to hide near the phone. I set it to automatically record whenever I answered a call. That night, I went through all my financial accounts. I created new passwords, closed unused credit cards, and froze my credit at all 3 major bureaus. I even moved a small portion of my savings to a new account under a different bank. It made me sick to realize I had to protect myself from my own child, but I couldn't afford another surprise. Over the next few days, I forced myself to keep busy baking, cleaning, reading old books, anything to keep my mind from wandering to Jenna. But even when I wasn't thinking about her, she was still there in the back of my mind, the little girl I'd once held, who now saw me as nothing more than a resource to exploit. A week passed before I heard from her again. A text came late one night. Mom, can we please talk? I want to fix things. I hate that we're fighting. Mr. Hensley's words echoed in my mind. Keep communication open. So I took a deep breath and replied, I'd like that. Maybe it's time we both calm down and start over. I felt dirty typing it. But it worked. Within minutes, she replied, Can I call you tomorrow? The next morning, my phone rang at 10:04 a.m. The recorder captured everything. Jenna started off sweet, remorseful, all the right words in all the right tones. She said she was ashamed, that Tyler was working on making things right, and that they were talking to someone about repayment options. But as the conversation went on, her tone began to shift. Mom, she said softly, you're not really going to the police, are you? I hesitated, pretending to be unsure. I don't know, honey. I just want this nightmare to end. Her voice hardened. Because if you do, Tyler said, it'll make things worse for all of us. He says once the police get involved, they'll think you were part of it. They'll think you gave permission. I nearly laughed out loud, but I kept my voice calm. Why would they think that? Because you didn't report it right away, she said. Quickly. They'll say you were helping us hide it. There it was, the manipulation again, smooth and calculated. But this time, I wasn't falling for it. Oh, sweetheart, I said gently, forcing a small chuckle. No one's blaming anyone. I just want to make sure everything's handled the right way. She relaxed a little after that, her guard dropping just enough. Every word she said went onto that recording. Every threat, every lie, every subtle attempt to guilt me into silence. When the call ended, I sat there staring at the phone, a strange mix of sadness and satisfaction washing over me. It hurt to realize how far gone she was, how she sounded more like Tyler than herself, but I also knew I had something powerful now, proof. That evening I emailed the recording to Mr. Hensley and explained what she'd said. He wrote back within an hour. Excellent, Lorraine. Keep everything. If she calls again, act the same way. We're building a solid case. I felt a strange sense of empowerment reading his message. For the first time since Christmas, I wasn't the helpless victim in this story. I was the one writing the next chapter. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that things were building to something darker. Jenna had sounded desperate, yes, but Tyler's name kept surfacing like a storm waiting just beyond the horizon. And when desperate people feel cornered, they do unpredictable things. But when Jenna finally reached out again, her tone was far more dangerous than before. It was a cold Thursday morning when my phone rang again. The caller ID flashed Jenna's name, but something about the timing, 6:15 a.m., made my chest tighten. I hesitated before answering, my finger hovering over the green button. When I finally picked up, her voice came through, shaky but deliberate. "Mom, we need to talk. Now." I rubbed my temples, trying to sound calm. "Good morning, Jenna. What's going on?" She didn't waste time on small talk. "The collectors won't stop calling. They're threatening to take Tyler's car. And now they're saying they'll come after you. You need to help us clean this up before it gets worse." I felt my jaw tighten. "Clean this up?" "Jenna, I told you already, this is your mess. Not mine. You and Tyler made those choices." She exhaled sharply. "Mom, you don't understand. They're saying your name is on the paperwork. They'll go after you too if we don't make a payment soon. You'll lose your house." I let a pause hang in the air. "That's not how this works, Jenna. The bank already knows this was fraud. It's under investigation." Her voice changed softer, manipulative. "You don't want this to turn ugly, Mom. If you just say you gave us permission, it'll all go away. They'll reassign the debt and close the case." There it was again, the veiled threat beneath the sweetness. "You want me to lie for you?" I said flatly. "No," she protested. Just help us fix this before it ruins everyone. Please. I'm begging you." I kept my tone even, remembering Mr. Hensley's advice. "Let's talk in person. Maybe we can figure something out." There was a long pause. "Tyler wants to come too," she said finally. "We'll come by tonight." "Fine," I said, forcing warmth into my voice. "Come around 7. We'll talk it through." After hanging up, I sat in silence, the weight of dread pressing down on me. This wasn't about forgiveness anymore, it was leverage. Tyler wanted something from me, and he was using Jenna as bait. By noon, I called Mr. Hensley and told him everything. He didn't hesitate. "Lorraine, record this meeting. Do not agree to anything. And if they try to intimidate you, call the police immediately." That afternoon, I prepared my home like a stage for a performance I didn't want to give. I placed the small voice recorder on the coffee table, disguised beneath a stack of mail. Then I installed a small camera in the corner shelf facing the couch. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I paced the living room, my hands trembling. I told myself this wasn't revenge, it was justice. I needed to protect myself. And if that meant catching my daughter and her husband in the act, so be it. At exactly 7:03 p.m., headlights swept across the driveway. My heart raced as I opened the door. Jenna stood there, bundled in a coat, her face pale. Behind her was Tyler, his posture tense, his expression unreadable. "Hi, Mom," Jenna said cautiously. "Can we come in?" "Of course," I said, forcing a smile. "Let's talk in the living room." Tyler brushed past me first, his cologne mixed with the scent of cheap whiskey. He sat down heavily on the couch, spreading out like he owned the place. Jenna perched beside him, fidgeting with her sleeves. "So," I began, taking a seat across from them. "You said you needed help. Let's hear it." Tyler leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Here's the deal, Lorraine. We just need you to sign something, a short statement saying you knew about the credit account and approved it. Once that's done, we'll handle the rest. You want me to commit fraud to cover yours?" He shrugged. "It's not fraud if it's the truth." Jenna's voice cracked. "Mom, please, if you don't, they'll sue you and us. This is the only way out." I looked between them, feeling anger rising in my chest. "Jenna, I already told you the investigators know this wasn't me. If I sign anything, I'll be lying to protect criminals." Tyler's jaw tightened. "Watch your words, Lorraine. You might think you're the victim here, but legally, you're still attached to this mess. You could go down with us." I met his stare, refusing to flinch. "I have all the evidence I need to prove otherwise. Every document, every call, it's all recorded." That made him pause for half a second. Then he smirked. You think that'll save you? Banks don't care about old ladies crying fraud. They care about paperwork. And the paperwork says your name. Jenna looked between us, her voice trembling. Please, can't we just stop fighting? I can't take this anymore. I just want it to be over. I softened slightly, looking at her, the daughter I'd raised, now trapped between guilt and manipulation. Then do the right thing, Jenna. Turn yourselves in, tell the truth. Tyler laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. She's not doing that. And you're not going to ruin our lives because you're feeling self-righteous. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. Sign the paper, Lorraine. Or things are going to get very unpleasant for you. That was the moment I knew exactly what kind of man Tyler really was. Not desperate, but dangerous. I stood, my voice calm but firm. Get out of my house. Jenna grabbed his arm. Tyler, please. But he didn't move, not until she signs. My heart pounded, but I kept my composure. You need to leave, now, before I make a call you'll regret. His eyes narrowed, but something in my tone must have made him hesitate. With a muttered curse, he stood and stormed toward the door. Jenna followed, looking back at me with tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Mom, she whispered. I never wanted it to get like this. I didn't respond. I just watched them disappear into the night. Then I turned off the recorder, my hands trembling. I sent the audio and video files to Mr. Hensley immediately. He replied within minutes. This is solid, Lorraine. You've got them. Next step, file the report formally. They can't hide anymore. I leaned back in my chair, exhausted but resolute. For the first time, I wasn't afraid. I had evidence and power. When they arrived, I didn't expect how far they'd go to get what they wanted. They didn't wait long to show me how far they were willing to go. 3 nights after the confrontation, I was sitting alone in the living room when I heard loud knocking at the front door, not polite, hesitant taps this time, but heavy, angry pounding. My heart skipped a beat. I looked through the peephole and saw them, Jenna and Tyler, standing in the freezing dark, both visibly drunk. I hesitated. Every instinct told me not to open the door, but another part of me, the mother who still loved her daughter, couldn't just leave her out there. I cracked the door open slightly. Jenna, it's late, I said. You need to go home. Her voice was slurred. Mom, please, just let us in. We need to talk. Tyler pushed the door wider with his shoulder and stepped inside before I could respond. We're not leaving until this is settled, he said flatly. The smell of alcohol hit me immediately, sharp, bitter, mixed with something metallic. Jenna stumbled in behind him, her face streaked with tears, her lipstick smudged. I glanced quickly toward the small camera on the shelf. The red light blinked faintly. Everything was recording. What do you want? I asked, keeping my voice calm even though my hands were shaking. Tyler dropped a crumpled folder onto the coffee table. You're gonna fix this, Lorraine. You're gonna sign these papers and this whole mess disappears. I stared down at the folder. Inside were several documents, typed letters addressed to the credit company, claiming I had authorized the account for family support. It was a desperate attempt to rewrite history. I'm not signing anything, I said firmly. He took a step closer, his tone lowering into something menacing. You don't have a choice. You think the bank's gonna care about your little story? They'll take your house. You'll be the one in court, not us. I took a steadying breath. If you think threatening me will work, you're wrong. I already spoke to my lawyer. Everything is documented. His jaw tightened. Your lawyer doesn't scare me. But I could tell by the flicker in his eyes that he was bluffing. He was losing control. And he knew it. Jenna stepped forward, tears pooling again. Mom, please just do it. You don't understand. We're in danger. These people, they're serious. If you help us just this once, we can finally be done with all of this. I looked at her, searching her face for even a shred of sincerity. But all I saw was fear, not for me, but for herself. You mean if I lie for you? I said softly. She shook her head desperately. It's not lying, it's just fixing a mistake. Please, Mom. I'm begging you. Tyler slammed his palm down on the table, making me flinch. Stop playing the victim and sign the damn papers. The outburst made Jenna jump too. "Tyler, stop!" she cried, grabbing his arm. But he yanked it away. "Don't tell me what to do," he snapped. "Your mom started this. She could have just helped us quietly, but she had to go running to the cops." My heart pounded. I had to keep him talking, keep him angry enough to expose himself further. But not so angry he became violent. "Tyler," I said slowly, "you forged my name. You committed fraud. You stole from me. And now you're breaking into my house to force me to lie. Do you even hear yourself?" He sneered. "You talk like you're better than us. But you're not. You just got lucky. Your husband left you comfortable. And you hoard every dime like some greedy old woman. You owe Jenna more than you know." I blinked back tears. Not from fear, but from rage. Owe her? I gave her everything I could. Her education, her wedding, her freedom. And this is how she repays me? Jenna was sobbing now, covering her face. "Tyler, please stop," she whispered. He ignored her, pulling another paper from the folder and tossing it at me. "Just sign that. A single signature and all of this goes away." I didn't move. I could feel the camera recording every second, every cruel word. When I stayed silent, Tyler's voice grew darker. "You're making a mistake, Lorraine. I'm not gonna ask again." I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to stay steady. "No, Tyler, the only mistake I made was ever letting you into our lives." He glared at me for a long moment. Then, with a sudden motion, he kicked the leg of the coffee table, sending the papers flying across the room. The vase of flowers Jenna had brought days ago toppled over, shattering on the hardwood floor. "Enough!" I shouted, finally losing my composure. "Get out of my house right now before I call the police." Tyler took a step forward, his fists clenching. "You wouldn't dare!" My voice was cold. "Try me." The tension was electric, a single breath away from disaster. Then, somewhere behind us, the sound of sirens pierced the night air. Red and blue lights flickered through the curtains. Tyler froze, his face draining of color. I hadn't called the police yet, but my neighbor, Mrs. Calloway, must have heard the shouting and done it for me. Within minutes, there was a knock at the door. "Police. Is everything all right in there?" Tyler stepped back, trying to compose himself. "We were just leaving," he muttered, his confidence evaporating. Jenna turned to me, her eyes wide with panic. "Mom, please don't press charges. Please." I didn't respond. I just opened the door for the officers and stepped aside. The police separated us immediately. Tyler tried to talk his way out of it, saying it was a family argument, but when the officers saw the scattered documents on the floor and the bruising tone of the scene, they weren't buying it. They escorted them both outside, asking me to stay put while they sorted things out. As the door closed behind them, I finally allowed myself to breathe. My knees went weak, and I sank into the nearest chair, shaking. The whole encounter had lasted less than 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. When the officers left, I locked the door and checked the camera. The footage was all there, every word, every threat, every demand. I copied it to my laptop immediately and sent it to Mr. Hensley with a single message. "It's done. I have everything you need." He replied minutes later, "You did the right thing, Lorraine. This is exactly what we needed to finish the case." As I sat there in the dark, the house finally quiet, I looked around at the wreckage of the evening. The broken vase, the scattered papers, the faint smell of alcohol still lingering in the air. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. I wasn't scared anymore. I was ready. The moment they were escorted out, I knew I finally had enough to destroy their lies. I walked into the police station like I was walking into a funeral, not for a person, but for the idea I'd ever be able to trust my own blood again. The lobby smelled of disinfectant and old coffee. A young officer led me to an interview room where Mr. Hensley was already waiting, his face grave but steady. I placed the folder of evidence on the table and let it spill open. The forged applications, the emailed threats, the recording from the night they came crashing into my living room. The list of calls from collectors stamped with dates and times. Mr. Hensley watched me as I recounted everything, and when I mentioned Jenna by name, the words felt foreign in my mouth, like they belonged to someone else's life. The detective assigned to the case, a woman named Ruiz, listened without interrupting. When I finished, she rubbed her temple, then leaned forward. "Mrs. Taylor, this is comprehensive," she said. "Forgery, identity theft, coercion, possible threats. We'll take it seriously." They took my statement officially, then requested copies of every piece of evidence. I handed over the recorder and the camera footage, my hands surprisingly steady. Detective Ruiz made clear what I already feared. The system moves slowly when paperwork is involved, but when the evidence is this damning, they could act fast. "If we can prove the signatures are forged and link Tyler to the intimidation, we'll have probable cause," she said. "We'll work with the prosecutor to get warrants." In the days that followed, the police became a quiet pulse beneath my life. Officers came by to interview neighbors who might have heard the midnight shouting. They canvassed Jenna and Tyler's last known address, spoke to employers, and pulled financial records. Mr. Hensley coordinated with me constantly, translating legal jargon into plain words I could cling to. Every piece of information I'd collected, every text, every call, every suspicious transaction became part of a larger portrait that no longer looked like a family disagreement but a pattern of calculated theft. When the warrant was served, it felt surreal. I watched from the driveway as officers in plain clothes approached Tyler and Jenna's rented place. They moved quickly, authoritative, efficient, and within an hour the two of them were being led out in handcuffs. Jenna looked at me once as they passed the car. Her eyes were wild, then soft with a shame that made my stomach twist. Tyler glared like a cornered animal. The officer who had arrested them escorted them into separate vehicles, and for a moment the world narrowed to the sound of doors slamming and the distant whisper of onlookers. I felt nothing at first, only a hollow relief. The fear that had hovered over me for weeks loosened its grip. I went inside and sat at my kitchen table, the paperwork spread in front of me like a testament to survival. Mr. Hensley called to say the prosecutor was eager to pursue charges. "They've got enough to move forward," he said. "Now we'll work on ensuring you're protected financially and that the bank understands this was fraud." The bank, predictably, dragged its feet. Policies and bureaucracy wound their way through the process like slow-moving vines. But armed with the police report and the footage, the bank's fraud unit finally agreed to freeze the account and open an internal investigation. It didn't erase the stress of months of calls and the damage to my credit, but it was a victory, a small, tangible step. Friends rallied in ways that surprised me. Mrs. Calloway from next door dropped off casseroles and sat with me for hours, reminding me to breathe. I received condolence texts from people I hardly knew who had seen the police cars and heard whispers. A woman from the local church offered to drive me to appointments and helped me sort through the mountain of letters I'd been ignoring. Their kindness softened the edges of what had been a brutal isolation. There were nights when the grief came back in jagged waves, memories of Daniel laughing at some small joke, Jenna as a toddler sneaking frosting off the counter. Simple afternoons when nothing much was wrong. Those memories were bittersweet. But they also reminded me why I couldn't let this stand. I had to choose safety and truth over nostalgia. I had to choose the life I still wanted to live. The courts moved on their own timetable. Initial hearings were procedural arraignments, bail motions, preliminary hearings where attorneys circled like chess players sizing up their pieces. Tyler's bail was initially set high because of the threats and the amount involved. Jenna's was lower, complicated by what the prosecutor described as possible coercion. I sat through one hearing in a packed courtroom, my hands folded so tightly they ached. Strangers glanced at me with a mix of pity and curiosity. After one hearing, a young prosecutor approached me and asked if I would be willing to testify. My throat closed at the idea of standing up and telling a room full of strangers how my daughter had betrayed me, but I also felt a strange clarity. "Yes," I said. "I'll tell the truth." Word spread among our small town in ways I hadn't expected. Some people whispered that I was cruel, that families should handle things privately. Others brought casseroles and offered rides. There were calls from collection agencies that still tried to push, even with police involvement. But I had a file now: dates, names, case numbers, and I answered them with a confidence I hadn't had a month before. Through it all, the hardest thing was the silence Jenna left behind. I wondered if she had any idea of how much pain she'd caused, whether she felt remorse or only fear. I kept telling myself that whatever came next would be fair, that the legal system would sort through the lies and give each person what they deserved. Then, one afternoon as I was sorting mail at the kitchen table, an envelope slipped through the slot with a blocky return address I recognized all too well. I hesitated, then opened it. It was a letter from jail, and the handwriting on the page was Jenna's. I held the envelope for a long time before opening it, turning it over in my hands as if it might burn me. The paper was cheap, the kind used for official correspondence, but the handwriting on the front, round and careful, was unmistakable. My daughter's handwriting. From inmate Jenna Taylor. The words made my stomach knot. I finally tore it open, and several folded pages slipped out. The first line stopped me cold. "Mom, I know you probably hate me, but please, just read this before you decide what to do next." I sank into my chair and began reading. Her words spilled across the page, uneven, frantic. A mixture of apology and self-justification. She wrote that Tyler had manipulated her. That he'd been the one who first forged my signature. She claimed he'd told her it was harmless, that I'd never notice. "I didn't realize how deep we were in until it was too late," she said. "He said he'd fix everything." But then the calls started coming, and I panicked. I was scared, Mom. She admitted she'd gone along with his plan because she didn't want him to leave her. "I thought if I helped him, he'd love me more. I thought we were a team," she wrote. I didn't know what love was supposed to feel like anymore. There were moments in the letter that almost sounded like my daughter, glimpses of the gentle, anxious girl who used to cry over bad grades or call me at midnight when her first boyfriend broke her heart. But those flashes were buried under excuses, half-truths, and desperate rationalizations. "I know I hurt you. I can't take that back. But please, Mom, don't testify against me. If you do, they'll give me the full sentence. Tyler says he'll take the blame. But I don't trust him anymore. I just want to come home when this is over." I stopped reading for a moment, closing my eyes. The house was so quiet that the ticking of the kitchen clock sounded deafening. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. I wasn't sure what I felt: sorrow, anger, disappointment, or something emptier than all three. I picked up the letter again. "You were always the strong one. I remember how you used to hold me when I cried. And you'd tell me everything would be okay. You said love meant forgiveness. Please, Mom. I'm asking for that now. I can't survive in here without you." Forgiveness. The word lingered in my mind like smoke. How many times had I told Jenna that exact thing when she was little? That forgiveness was a kind of strength, that holding on to bitterness only poisoned the heart. But this wasn't about a broken vase or a failed test. This was a betrayal that had almost destroyed me. I folded the letter carefully and placed it on the table. My hands shook. I could almost hear Daniel's voice in my head, gentle and rational as always. "Don't let her mistake your compassion for weakness." Later that day, I called Mr. Hensley and told him about the letter. He asked me to bring it to his office so he could forward a copy to the prosecutor. "It's evidence of coercion," he explained. "But don't respond. Anything you write could be used against you or manipulated later." That night, I reread the letter again under the dim glow of the lamp. I looked at the familiar loops in her handwriting, the way she dotted her I's with tiny circles the same way she had since childhood. I remembered helping her with spelling homework at the kitchen table, her pencil clutched awkwardly, her brow furrowed in concentration. I'd loved those nights. She used to ask if she'd ever be as smart and organized as me, and now here she was, writing from a cell. I wondered if she was eating, if she had a blanket, if she was scared. The mother in me, the part that would never stop loving her, wanted to reach through those pages and pull her back, to erase the last year like it was a bad dream. But another part of me, the woman she had wronged, knew that love wasn't supposed to mean enabling. The next morning, Detective Ruiz called. "We received your lawyer's copy of the letter," she said. "It'll be helpful in showing intent and coercion. But Mrs. Taylor..." I have to prepare you. The defense might argue that you're partially to blame for not noticing sooner. I sighed. They can argue whatever they want. I just want the truth out. When the trial date was announced, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The storm had passed. In one sense, the chaos and manipulation were out in the open, but another storm was brewing, one that would force me to face my daughter in court. The days leading up to the trial were heavy. I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing her as she'd been that Christmas morning, handing me the envelope with shaking hands. I thought that was guilt back then. Now I knew it was fear, the fear of getting caught. On the morning of the trial, I dressed carefully, a simple navy dress, hair neatly pinned back, no makeup except for a touch of lipstick. I wasn't going to hide or play the victim. I was there to stand for what was right, even if it meant breaking my own heart in public. When I arrived at the courthouse, reporters milled outside, though most didn't recognize me. I walked past them silently, clutching my bag like a lifeline. Inside, I saw her Jenna sitting beside her attorney, wearing a pale beige suit that hung loosely on her thinner frame. She looked up for just a moment, and our eyes met. Hers filled with tears immediately, and I felt mine sting too. I wanted to run to her, to tell her I still loved her, but I stayed where I was. There were things love couldn't fix. The trial was about to begin, and the truth that came out would shatter whatever illusions I had left about the daughter I thought I knew. The courtroom smelled faintly of dust and old wood polish, the kind of scent that carried years of other people's tragedies. I sat at the witness table with my hands folded tightly in my lap, my heart thudding so loudly I could hear it echo in my ears. Jenna sat across the room at the defense table, her face pale, her shoulders hunched. Tyler sat beside her, unshaven and scowling, his cuffed hands resting on the table. The judge entered, the bailiff called for order, and for a moment everything felt surreal, as though I were watching my own life from a distance. I could barely believe this was real. My daughter, my flesh and blood, sitting there as a defendant in a fraud and identity theft case where I was the victim. The prosecutor, a young woman with sharp eyes named Miss Kramer, began with a clear, confident tone. "Your Honor, this case isn't about misunderstanding or family miscommunication. This is about betrayal, a deliberate, well-documented scheme to defraud and manipulate a mother who trusted her daughter implicitly." Each word struck me like a hammer. When it was my turn to testify, my legs shook as I walked to the stand. The clerk asked me to swear the oath, and as I raised my hand, I felt the weight of the moment settle deep in my bones. I sat, adjusted the microphone, and forced myself to look straight ahead, not at Jenna, not at Tyler, but at the judge. Miss Kramer began gently. "Mrs. Taylor, can you describe in your own words how you discovered the fraudulent account?" I told the story from that Christmas morning when Jenna handed me the envelope, to the collector's calls, to the forged documents, to the night they broke into my house demanding I sign false papers. My voice trembled a few times, but I held steady. Every so often, I glanced briefly at Jenna, hoping to see remorse. But all I saw was fear, and behind it, exhaustion. When the prosecutor played the audio recordings, the courtroom went silent except for the sound of my daughter's voice. "Mom, if you just sign it, we can make this all go away." And then Tyler's threat. "You'll regret this, Lorraine. Don't test me." Even the judge's expression hardened. The defense attorney, a tall man with graying hair, tried to soften Jenna's involvement. "Mrs. Taylor," he said, adjusting his glasses, "is it possible that your daughter was coerced by her husband? That she didn't fully understand the legal implications?" I took a deep breath. Coerced or not, she knew it was wrong. She forged my name. She hid it for a year. That's not confusion, that's choice. The defense attorney nodded, moving on. But the seed was planted. As the day unfolded, their strategy became clear. Paint Jenna as a naive, emotionally manipulated woman controlled by a domineering husband. And then came Tyler's testimony. He was defiant, at first leaning back in the chair, smirking, pretending to take the moral high ground. "I made mistakes," he said. "But I never forced Jenna to do anything. She's the one who came up with using her mom's credit. I didn't even want to." My stomach twisted. Jenna shook her head vigorously beside him, tears spilling down her cheeks. "That's not true," she cried out. her voice breaking. "You told me to do it. You said she'd never find out." The courtroom murmured, and the judge called for order. Tyler looked at her, his face turning red. "You're really gonna do this?" he snapped. "After everything?" The prosecutor seized the moment. "Mr. Tyler, are you admitting that you and Jenna discussed using Mrs. Taylor's credit?" He hesitated too long. The pause was damning. "I didn't say that," he muttered, looking down. But the damage was done. His earlier arrogance evaporated, replaced by panic. Under cross-examination, he contradicted himself several times, admitting he had helped fill out the forms, then insisting Jenna handled the paperwork. When Jenna's turn came to testify, her composure cracked entirely. She sobbed through most of her answers, her words coming out in fragments. "I did it. I forged the signature. But I didn't mean to hurt her. I thought I could fix it before she ever found out." The courtroom fell silent again. I could feel tears threatening my eyes, but I blinked them back. Hearing her confess not to the police, not in a letter but in front of strangers, was both devastating and oddly relieving. "Miss," Kramer asked softly, "why didn't you tell your mother the truth when she confronted you?" Jenna swallowed hard. "Because Tyler said she'd turn me in, and I was scared of losing him. I thought if I kept lying it would somehow make things better." The prosecutor nodded. "And now?" Jenna glanced at me then, just once. "Now I know she was right. I ruined everything." Her voice broke completely. When the defense rested, the courtroom was thick with tension. The closing arguments came and went like waves, sharp, emotional, exhausting. Miss Kramer ended hers with a single sentence that would stay with me forever. "Trust is sacred, Your Honor, but trust can't excuse crime." The judge's verdict came 2 weeks later. Tyler was found guilty on all major charges: fraud, identity theft, and coercion. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Jenna was found guilty of forgery and fraud but received a lighter sentence, 18 months, reduced for cooperation and evidence of manipulation. When the gavel came down, my chest felt both heavy and light at once. I wanted to cry, to scream, to collapse, but instead, I sat quietly, staring straight ahead. As they led Jenna away, she looked back one last time. Her eyes were swollen, her lips trembling. "I'm sorry, Mom," she mouthed silently. I nodded, but I couldn't speak. There was nothing left to say. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked how I felt about the outcome. I simply said, "It's justice. Painful justice, but justice." That night, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea gone cold, the house utterly silent. I stared at the faint reflection of the Christmas lights I still hadn't taken down, their soft glow flickering against the window pane. I'd lost my daughter in one sense, but I'd regained something else, the courage to stand up for myself, even when it meant standing against my own blood. Still, as I sat there, I couldn't help but wonder if she'd ever truly feel remorse or if the prison walls would harden her beyond repair. After the sentencing, the world seemed unnervingly quiet. For months, everything had been chaos: lawyers, hearings, statements, detectives, but now, there was silence. It should have been peaceful, but instead, it felt hollow. I would wake up in the mornings and half expect another phone call, another letter, another crisis. When none came, the stillness settled over me like dust. My lawyer closed my case file 2 weeks after the verdict. The bank officially cleared my name, removing the fraudulent debt from my record. My credit score would take years to recover, but at least I could breathe again without fear of losing my home. When I got the official letter confirming the closure of the account, I cried for the first time since Jenna's arrest, not from sadness this time, but from release. It was strange how freedom could feel both liberating and lonely. I no longer had to look over my shoulder, but the price of that safety was distance from my daughter, from the idea of family, from everything that had once defined my life. The first thing I did was clean the house from top to bottom. Every room that had held tension and anger, every corner where memories lingered, I scrubbed it all away. I boxed up old paperwork, shredded copies of statements, and put away the last of the Christmas decorations. That season, which had once meant warmth and laughter, had turned into a symbol of betrayal. I decided it was time to reclaim it. With the legal mess behind me, I started attending a financial recovery workshop at the local community center. Most people there were strangers, widows, retirees, and a few younger folks trying to rebuild after bankruptcy. It was humbling, sitting among them, realizing I wasn't alone. One afternoon, during a break, a woman named Claire sat next to me. She was around my age, with kind eyes and a calm presence. "You're Lorraine, right? I've seen you here before," she said. "Yes," I replied, trying to figure out how to start over, I guess. She smiled knowingly. "Aren't we all? Life doesn't stop giving lessons, even when we think we've learned enough." Over the weeks that followed, Claire and I became friends. She'd been through something eerily similar. Her son had drained her savings to fund a gambling addiction. "You never think your child will be the one to break you," she said one evening as we shared coffee after class. "But sometimes love blinds us to the warnings." Her honesty comforted me. We laughed, we vented, we healed together in small, quiet ways. Slowly, I began to rediscover myself, the parts of me that existed outside of motherhood. I took up gardening again, something I hadn't done since Daniel's death. My backyard bloomed with color by spring tulips, daisies, and bright yellow marigolds. Life, in its own stubborn way, kept growing. I also started volunteering at a women's shelter downtown. Most of the women there were escaping abusive relationships or financial manipulation. I shared my story one afternoon at a support meeting, hesitant at first. But as I spoke, I could see the recognition in their eyes. The same disbelief. The same heartbreak. When I finished, one of them hugged me and whispered, "Thank you. You made me feel less stupid." That moment changed me. For the first time in a long while, I felt like what had happened to me, all the pain and humiliation, could mean something. It could help someone else. By summer, my life had a rhythm again. I sold the house Daniel and I had shared for nearly 30 years. It was too big, too full of memories that ached when I walked through the halls. I bought a smaller place closer to my sister, Ruth, in a quiet town an hour away. Ruth was overjoyed. "You'll love it here," she said as we unpacked boxes together. New start, new you. The new house was cozy, 2 bedrooms, a sunlit kitchen, and a small garden out back. For the first time in years, I slept through the night without waking to the echo of my own anxiety. But every so often, especially when the evenings were long and the world felt still, I found myself thinking about Jenna. Was she okay? Did she eat enough? Was she angry at me, or did she finally understand why I had done what I did? I sent her one letter after her sentencing, a short one. I told her I still loved her, but I couldn't visit until I knew she was ready to take real responsibility for what she'd done. She never wrote back. Maybe she couldn't. Maybe she didn't know what to say. As December crept closer again, I felt the familiar tug of melancholy. Christmas lights started appearing in neighbors' yards, and the scent of pine and cinnamon filled every store. It reminded me of that fateful Christmas, the one that had changed everything. But this time, I wasn't afraid of it. I bought a small tree for my new living room, decorated it simply with white lights and silver ornaments. When I lit it, I didn't feel grief. I felt peace, quiet, fragile peace. Then, one crisp December morning, as I was sipping coffee by the window, a knock echoed through my front door. It startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, my breath caught. Standing on the porch, wrapped in a worn gray coat, was Jenna. Her hair was shorter, her face thinner, her eyes older. She clutched a small gift bag in her trembling hands. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. "Can I come in?" Then, one December morning, I received another unexpected visitor. For a moment, I couldn't move. It was as if time had stopped, the world narrowing to the fragile figure standing on my doorstep. The last time I'd seen Jenna, she'd been led away in handcuffs, her face streaked with tears. Now, she stood before me 2 years older, thinner, paler, and somehow smaller, like life itself had worn her down. I swallowed hard. "Jenna," I whispered, You're out?" She nodded. "Early release for good behavior," she said quietly, not meeting my eyes. "I've been out for a few weeks. I wanted to come sooner, but I didn't know if you'd want to see me." I hesitated. Every instinct told me to protect myself, to keep the walls up that I'd built brick by brick after everything that happened. But then she looked up, and in her eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Not defiance, not manipulation, just sincerity. "Come in," I said softly. She stepped inside slowly, glancing around my small living room. The house smelled faintly of cinnamon and pine. My Christmas tree twinkled in the corner, modest but warm. She smiled faintly when she saw it. "You still love Christmas," she murmured. "I do," I said, though it hasn't felt the same for a long time. We sat across from each other on the couch, the silence heavy between us. She placed the small gift bag she'd been holding on the coffee table. "I brought you something," she said. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," she replied quickly. "It's just something small." I reached into the bag and pulled out a picture frame. Inside was an old photo, Jenna at 10 years old, sitting between Daniel and me on the couch, all of us wearing matching Christmas sweaters. I felt my throat tighten. "Where did you find this?" I asked softly. "I kept it," she said. "It was in my things when I was arrested. I looked at it every night. It reminded me of who I used to be before everything went wrong." I traced the edge of the photo with my thumb. The frame was simple, the kind you'd buy at a dollar store, but it felt priceless. She took a shaky breath. "Mom, I know I don't deserve to be here. I can't imagine what I put you through. There's no excuse for what I did. But I want you to know, I'm trying to make things right." I studied her face, the hollow cheeks, the tired eyes, the tiny tremor in her hands. She wasn't the same girl who had once stood in my living room demanding money or spewing blame. Prison had changed her. Life had changed her. "What have you been doing since you got out?" I asked. "I'm working at a thrift shop run by the church downtown," she said. "They hired me through a rehabilitation program. I'm also in counseling, court-ordered, but I keep going even when I don't have to." "That's good," I said. She nodded, twisting her fingers nervously. "They say I should reach out to the people I've hurt, not to ask for forgiveness, but to take responsibility. That's why I'm here. I'm not here to ask you for money, or anything. I just want you to know, I finally understand what I did to you." Her voice cracked, and she covered her face with her hands. "I thought I was smart back then. I thought I could fix everything, lie my way out, charm my way through. I didn't realize what I was doing to you until it was too late. I took your trust, your peace, your safety. I ruined the one person who actually loved me without conditions." Tears welled in my eyes, blurring my vision. I wanted to stay strong, but the sound of her crying, real, broken sobbing tore through every wall I'd built. I reached out and touched her hand. She flinched at first, then looked up, eyes wide. "Jenna," I said quietly, "you hurt me more than I thought possible, but you're still my daughter. And seeing you here, trying to change, it means something." She nodded quickly, her tears spilling over. "I'll never stop trying to make it right. I can't fix the past, but I can live differently. I want to be someone you're not ashamed of." "I was never ashamed of you," I whispered. "Heartbroken, yes. Angry, yes. But never ashamed." We sat there for a long time, both crying softly, two broken pieces of a family trying to fit back together. The past still lingered between us like smoke. But there was also something else in the air, a faint, fragile hope. After a while, I got up and poured us both some tea. We talked quietly for hours about her job, her counseling, her plans to move into a shared apartment. She told me about the friends she'd made in the program, people who'd lost everything but were fighting to rebuild. When the clock struck 10, she stood, hesitating near the door. "I should go," she said. "I didn't want to stay too long." I walked her to the porch. The night was cold, the air sharp with the scent of pine and frost. She turned to me, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then she said softly, "I want to tell you something before I go." I braced myself, unsure what was coming. "I know you'll probably never trust me with money again. And that's okay," she said. "But I've been saving what I can from my paychecks. I just wanted you to know. I'm going to make things right." I don't expect anything back, not even forgiveness. I just want to give back a piece of what I took. Her voice broke on the last word. Jenna, I said, my throat tight. You don't owe me anything anymore. You owe it to yourself to live better. That's all. She nodded, tears glistening under the porch light. I love you, Mom. I never stopped. I love you too, I whispered. We hugged, awkward at first, then tighter. It wasn't the same embrace as before, it was heavier, tempered with grief and forgiveness, but it was real. When she finally stepped off the porch, she turned back and smiled faintly through her tears. Merry Christmas, Mom, she said. I watched her walk down the snowy path until she disappeared into the night. My heart ached. But it wasn't the same ache as before. It was softer, the ache of healing. But what she said before leaving that day left me speechless once more. I barely slept that night. After Jenna left, I sat on the couch, staring at the framed photo she'd brought me. The three of us, Daniel, Jenna, and me, all smiling in matching red sweaters, unaware of the years of joy and heartbreak ahead. The photo felt like both a wound and a promise, a reminder that even the deepest pain could coexist with love. The next morning, I made myself coffee and stood by the window, watching the frost melt off the garden I'd worked so hard to bring back to life. The marigolds were long gone, the soil bare, but the memory of their color made me smile faintly. I was thinking about how far I'd come, how far we had come when I heard a knock at the door again. My heart jumped. For a moment, I thought Jenna might have changed her mind and come back. When I opened the door, I didn't see her, just a small envelope lying on the doormat. There was no return address, only my name written neatly on the front. I bent down and picked it up, recognizing her handwriting immediately. Inside was a short letter and a folded bank slip. I sat down on the couch and began to read. Mom, I wanted to tell you this in person, but I was afraid I'd start crying again. You said I don't owe you anything, but I need to do this not because you asked, but because I finally understand what taking responsibility means. I've been working since I got out, saving every paycheck, every spare dollar. I've been sending a small payment every month to the credit bureau that handled your case. It's not much, but it's something. I've managed to save $5,000 so far, and I'm transferring it to your retirement fund. It's not even close to what I took, but it's a start. My counselor says true forgiveness begins with action. This is mine. I love you, Mom. I don't expect you to forget. I just hope someday, when you look at me, you see the woman who's trying, not the girl who failed you. I stared at the letter until the words blurred. My hands shook as I unfolded the bank slip. It was real, a direct deposit receipt. She had transferred $5,000 into my account. It wasn't the amount that mattered. It was what it represented: honesty, accountability. The first real step toward rebuilding something I had thought was beyond repair. I pressed the letter to my chest and let out a shaky breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. For the first time in years, I didn't feel anger or fear. I felt peace. That afternoon, I sat in the garden with a blanket wrapped around me, the winter sun weak but comforting. I thought about everything that had happened: the betrayal, the lies, the courtrooms, the nights I'd cried myself to sleep. All of it had led to this quiet moment of understanding. Daniel had always said, "Love doesn't die when people make mistakes, it just changes shape." I used to think that was something people said to comfort themselves, but now I knew he was right. My love for Jenna hadn't disappeared. It had transformed into something wiser, quieter, steadier. A few days later, I received a letter from Jenna again. This one was shorter, handwritten on a scrap of paper. I got approved for my own apartment, Mom. It's small, but it's mine. I'm going to hang the photo of us on the wall. Every time I look at it, I'll remember where I came from and who I never want to hurt again. I smiled as I folded it carefully and placed it in a small box with her first letter, the photo frame, and a copy of the police report that had once symbolized my heartbreak. I didn't keep the report out of bitterness, but as proof of what we'd survived, both of us. When Christmas Eve arrived, I decorated my little house, simply a single garland across the fireplace, a few candles, and the small tree Jenna had seen when she visited. I cooked dinner for myself and Claire, who had become like family. After she left that night, I stood at the window, holding a single candle in my hand. Outside, snow was falling softly, blanketing the street in quiet white. I thought of Jenna maybe sitting in her new apartment, maybe hanging that picture on the wall, maybe whispering a small prayer for strength. I placed the candle on the windowsill and lit it, watching its glow reflect in the glass. It wasn't for anyone else to see, just a silent signal to the daughter I still loved, wherever she was. "Be well, Jenna," I whispered. "You've finally found your way home." As I turned off the lights and climbed into bed, I realized something profound. Forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. It's about accepting that the scars are part of the story, reminders not of weakness, but of survival. I had lost so much in the years before, but now I was free. Free from fear, free from resentment. Free to love my daughter again, this time without illusion, just truth. That Christmas morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains and the faint hum of the world waking up outside. I brewed my coffee, wrapped myself in a blanket, and sat by the glowing tree. The candle still flickered in the window, its flame small but steady, like hope itself, fragile but unyielding. And for the first time in years, I finally felt at peace.